Hello, everybody. We have a new Gran Turismo 7 update, and we're here to talk all about it. I'm Jordan Greer, the owner of GT Planet, and I'm joined here by Andrew Evans and Chaz Draycott. So let's get right to it, guys. I think this update, the big headline is, of course, the Mercedes-Benz Unimog, one of the more unique and unusual cars, I think, to come to Gran Turismo in the franchise history, really.
Absolutely. I described it in my first video with it as Marmite, which is a strange yeast paste thing that we get over here. It basically describes whether half a country loves it, half a country hates it. It was always going to divide it, but I think we all agree that we're on the side of loving it because it's such a unique vehicle compared to all the other stuff in the game. And another thing I raised in the video driving it around and jumping it through the air in a video that's probably next to my head actually right now is the fact that it's one of those cars that makes you think why, but not the same why as the Toyota CHRS thing that we got in the last update. You know, it's why as in sort of you look at it and go why, but okay, yeah, I'll have a bit of fun with it. Whereas with the Toyota, you can't. So we're just going to banish that from memory. But I love it. It's a great bit of kit. It's fun to look at, and it's there's a lot of configurations with it as well, isn't there, Andrew? That's what makes it a bit fun to play with and mess about with.
Yeah, I mean, I've never ever even conceived of hay bales being a racing item, but apparently they are in the world of Gran Turismo. But it's one of those cars that kind of harks back to kind of the Gran Turismo 4 era where we had like the Model T and the Benz pattern motor wagon and vehicles like that. It's one of those. It doesn't really necessarily appeal to people who like the new stuff and they want the race cars and they want the brand spanking new thing. But it's one of those that it's got a precedent in the history of the Gran Turismo series, and we knew that an awful lot of people were going to be really quite against it when they saw it. Why are you adding this? And it's. I mean, I understand the feeling that people want to see the new GT3 cars because it's quite an outdated set now, and I think we're still driving the Ferrari 458 when it's 2 generations out of date, and I do understand the complaints about that, but this is kind of more what older Gran Turismo was about, and it's one of those things. If you've been a Gran Turismo fan from the beginning, or for over 20 years, like the GT Planet site has been in existence, it's one of those things that you have to appreciate. I mean, it's not going to have a tremendous lot of use in the game. It doesn't really necessarily fit into too many races. I mean, there is a Sunday Cup Classic race, that's just been added for it. I raced it earlier, and it held everything up, and then was a lap and a half down at the end. But it is hilarious to drive. There's like 20 pages of liveries for it already. I mean, it's only been out 10 hours at this point in time, and people are kind of really appreciating it, and I think Jordan was having a drive in it in PSVR earlier on, and he had some very nice comments to say about it.
Yeah, I sure did. I was driving it flat screen first, and I was enjoying it as you enjoy unusual cars in Gran Turismo games. I was looking at the customization options and stuff, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I was driving it, and I thought, okay, yeah, this is quirky, fun, really slow. And then I was looking around inside, and I was like, this is going to be good in VR. So I got the headset out, put it on, and I took it to Grand Valley Highway, and which is basically the Pacific Coast Highway. It's kind of what I think about it as. And I thought I just kind of want to drive this around in VR and see what it's like. And so I loaded it up and started driving around and started driving over the bridge. And I was like, okay, I just want to stop and look around and take in the interior first. And so I stopped. I was on the bridge and I start looking around. Of course, I mean, I've been using VR for years now. And so I was taking it all in, and that wasn't shocking or anything, but there's something about it. I started to get sort of a sense of scale for the truck, how it's not like it's big, obviously, but it's not like huge. And I noticed I started to take in all the details about it, about the interior, and how like I could tell I was up high, but there wasn't a ton of room inside. And then I started looking around and I started watching the ocean, and I feel like this is crazy, but the ocean on that track has not been fully appreciated because I was watching the waves roll in. I'm just sitting there, just looking out the window of the Unimog, okay, and I was like, "This is beautiful. This is beautiful." Seagull comes overhead, and I hear it overhead. It sounds like it's above me, and I see him flying along. You kind of hear the wind and the waves and the rumble of that little tiny diesel engine, and I was just taking it in. But like the waves, seriously, the waves and the ocean look so realistic off of that bridge. And I've been there. I've been to that spot. I've been to that bridge. I've been to that area, and it does have this dreamy sort of quality. There's something about that area that's unlike any other place in the world. One of my favorite places in California, if not one of my favorite areas of the world. So, and I've been to that track before, but I've never appreciated it like I did in the Unimog. Then I started driving, and I was having a blast because I was learning how to drive the truck. The gears, they're so, I mean, I don't know if you just call them short. I mean, I guess they are short, but it's like first gear gets you to like what, 5 miles an hour?
3, yeah.
Yeah. And
I tried to start earlier, and it was just like, oh, Jesus, right.
Yeah, it's such a quirky thing to drive. I mean, if you drive tractors and farm equipment and things like that, it's not that unusual, but compared to anything else in Gran Turismo and what most of us drive every day, it is a very different experience. And I was watching the gauges and sort of learning how to drive the car. And in VR, it's easier to pretend that you are actually in the car. And I just did that. I'm like, okay, I'm in a Unimog on the Pacific Coast Highway. I was there. I felt it. And I started just driving the truck like I would. And I got in the right lane, driving on the correct side of the road, guys, UK guys, driving on the correct side. And, just start driving up. And then, you go through that sort of tunnel thing, and you kind of come up to, there's like an intersection, and you make a right turn. Then you go over that second bridge, that smaller bridge before it goes into the tunnel. And there's a stop sign, and there's a line across the road. I was so immersed in driving this truck, I completely forgot about everything. I was driving a Unimog on the PCH, and I just drove up to it, and I started downshifting. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to over rev this engine. So I slowed down, and then I turned to look for traffic, and I was like, I felt stupid, and I felt in awe at the exact same time, because it got me good. It got me good. And I started laughing. That's because I was like, this is crazy. And so I went on and drove the lap, and it was so enjoyable. It was like I was actually there. It was I don't know. I've done VR for years now. I've tried it out, but it was just something special. And I don't think that anything other than the Unimog, I mean, I'm sure that I shouldn't say that, but being in the Unimog and just experiencing it and going slow and being able to take in everything, watching the smoke come from the chimneys of those buildings along the straight there where the starting line is, you just take in more of the environment. And it was just a time trial. I was just cruising, and I had a blast. It was really special. So I know I sound like a crazy person.
A real driving simulator, isn't it?
Yeah. It really makes you appreciate these other parts of the game that get overlooked when you're in a GT3 car or something like that.
And that's the thing with VR. It's, it can be finicky. It can make people sick. It can be a pain in the backside sometimes. But when the immersion and the conditions are all right together and they really meld well, it really does trick you into thinking you're there. I mean, how many videos have we all seen of people playing certain games and falling over in it? Like there's a legendary video of a guy playing VR snooker or something. And he goes to lean on the table and falls flat on his face on the floor because he thinks the table's actually there. Stuff like that. When it comes together in the right environment, it really is amazing how in-depth you can sort of experience VR. I love it.
Yeah, and I didn't expect it to be in a Unimog.
Like, of all things.
The thing. Like, you just never know what... I mean, it's happened to me a few times before when using VR. I mean, because it's like, it's kind of hot, and it's kind of like... It's great, don't get me wrong. Like, I love it. It's amazing, but it's not like... It's like I said in my review, it's like an occasion when you want to use it. But when everything comes together in the right car... right track, the right conditions, it's just really something special. So If you've got PSVR 2, drive the Unimog at Grand Valley. You will thank me later. It's a special experience. But I think that's one thing about the Unimog is it's not something that, I mean, I've seen them in Europe before on my travels, but around here, it's not something that in the US, that is, it's not something that people know exists or really know about at all. I think this is a great example of Gran Turismo teaching people about just how broad the car culture can actually be, and how broad it just teaches you what's out there, really. And that's something that people here in the United States and, kids who may be playing the game, they're going to see a Unimog now and they're going to know what it is. And when they go to Europe, they're going to have a better understanding of car culture and what's out there. It makes it really educational and fun. And I think that's a part that is often forgotten when people are criticizing these types of additions to the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Gran Turismo, the very first game back in the late 90s, was what formed my love of cars. I used to see things like an RX-7 or a Supra, even just all the 487,000 models of Subaru Impreza that were in the first game. You'd see one on the road and I'd know what it was now. It made cars relatable to me and I could identify them visually. And that's what started my interest in it. And it's great to see that even now, God knows how many years on from when they first got all the ideas together, Gran Turismo's still doing that, and it's fantastic. And that is that sort of purpose to a car like that, isn't it? It's to make it relatable and it's almost like spreading the word about it, but it's a bit late to market a vehicle from 1962.
Yeah, I think I understand why these cars are controversial. I understand why people say, like Andrew was saying, we need the newer GT3 cars. And it's kind of a shame, I think, that we aren't getting some of those newer cars. Because I think if we were getting some of these more in demand, I guess, race cars, then people would be more accepting of things like the Unimog, these oddball choices. Yeah. But this is core Gran Turismo, guys. Like if you don't understand these additions, then this is welcome to Gran Turismo, because this is vintage Kazunori. This is classic Gran Turismo.
And I've been, a lot of people on the forums have been having a great deal of fun with it, and it's bearing in mind some of the backlash we've seen on social media, it's kind of, there's a great juxtaposition of how the people who actually play the game are enjoying it.
Yeah, 100%.
And you know what else? I've been super busy today. I've got a ton of stuff going on. So I only had a small window of time to
He's been winning
play
pickleball tournaments.
I only had a small window of time to actually try these cars. And so I was, trying out the new update and everything. I got carried away wanting to customize the thing. You've got the wide body kits, you've got the hay bales, you've got the camper van box edition. You can do so much with the tires and the wheels. It's like what, 26, 27, 28 inch wheels, I think. These are some of the largest wheel sizes you can put on any vehicle in the game. And you can make it look crazy. And I was having a lot of fun. I think this is one of the most diverse vehicles in terms of customization options that we've had yet in Gran Turismo 7, which is hilarious that it's a Unimog.
Yeah. It ticks so many boxes. That's the thing with it. I made a really tacky, fully carbon fiber one. It looked like a full carbon fiber prison van with over 200 horsepower. Took loads of weight out of it. And in the video that I made, it was a hell of a lot of fun to drive, because it just felt like a rally car that realistically probably should tip over, but didn't. And I was very grateful for that, I must say, because it would have made a hell of a noise. But it is just, like you say, diverse is definitely the word. There's so many corners of car culture that you can appeal to with one vehicle. It's so hard to describe, but it's so brilliant.
Yeah, and you still have to buy dirt tires for the thing, believe it or not.
That's the only thing I found a bit negatively strange.
All right, I'm just looking at the timer. We spent nearly 15 minutes on the Unimog.
No surprise.
No surprise.
No surprise.
Big truck,
But there are other cars in the update as well.
There are other cars,
one of which
in
is
the
an
update.
iconic European hot hatch. That's I mean, people on GT Planet have been suggesting it for years, and it's one that I think pretty much everyone my age and a little bit younger has desired over the last 20 years, and the prices are going through the roof. My wife used to have a Miami blue one, which was nicely written off for her by somebody else.
You?
And it's the Peugeot 205 GTI.
An icon. It is an icon of what hot hatch means. It was one of the originals at the end of the day, and it was one of the properly hot hatches too. I've actually just come back from an event over the past weekend called Race Retro here in the UK, where they have a lot of rally influence there. The amount of Peugeot 205s and things, and ones on sale in the auction as well. It's great to still see them knocking about. And then for one to come on Gran Turismo the same weekend, I've got this real need for like production car racing at the moment, low powered hatchbacks with very little modifications that you can just kick its head in absolutely everywhere. You won't break the speed limit, but you'll have a whale of a time doing it. And that's what the 205 is all about for me. It's a yob of a car that won't actually get you in trouble. It's really cool.
I really like it too. I think it's interesting hearing your guys' perspective, and I've seen this on the forums as well. There is that nostalgic element to it. It's a car, of course, that nobody in the U.S. grew up with. So it's sort of this. I mean, I've known about the Peugeot 205 for a long time, but it's something that I've always just seen and heard about, but I've never actually. I didn't grow up seeing them, and I didn't know people who owned one or that sort of thing. I think this is a really nice nod, I think, to Europeans, and a lot of people will be nostalgic about this car, and that's a great thing. And it is fun to drive. I had a blast driving it. It's not quick, but it's not really too slow either. I mean, you can have fun with it.
It's in a great middle ground, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Where you can really throw it about, and it's not going to punish you for sort of expecting more of it. And it doesn't let you down. It doesn't sort of get to a hill or a particularly sharp corner and then make you think, oh, well, it's not done very well there. Because it wants to go. It's got a lot of personality to it. It wants to go fast.
It's one of those cars where you drive it in the game, and I'm like, I can tell this would be fun to drive. Like, I want one.
Yeah. And that's when a car's been done really well in a racing game, is that it makes you want to then seek out the real world counterpart, especially in a road car sense as well, because look at the amount of games where you can jump in the fastest cars in the world and hypercars just at the click of a button. But for you to look at a hot hatch with, sub 200 horsepower and go, I want a real one, that really shows you how well it's been put together and that it gives off the image that it should.
Yeah. The and speaking of cars that are nice to drive, I think the BMW Z4 is one which I mean I've always been kind of, I don't know, indifferent to the Z4. I like it in some ways. It depends on the angle that I look at the car, and sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I don't like it. I was a little bit surprised. It seems a little bit like a dated addition to the game. I don't know, just kind of a random car to put in this update, I thought. But then I drove it, and I've never driven one in real life, but I really enjoyed putting some laps in this thing.
I'm not a massive fan of how it looked originally, the original Bangle design, which is the car that we've got, which is also, so it was in GT4 through 6, so this is kind of an updated car version of one that we've had before. I prefer the facelift, or as BMW calls it, life cycle impulse, which kind of refreshed everything a little bit. And I have driven one of those a few years ago, and I'm kind of fond of it in a sort of, I couldn't really own one, but kind of guilty pleasure one. But yeah, I've had a crack with the time trial earlier on, and yeah, I know the comfort soft tyres are a little bit on the slippery side, but it's good fun to chuck around in a sort of like a grown up, balding mid-40s man version of an MX-5.
I think the fun part of it is that it's got enough power and capability to spin up the rears and get oversteery on the exit of a corner. You can be really heavy-footed with it and get away with it still. It's right on that perfect balance. It's got quite a big engine up front, with it being the 3-litre version of the car. So you really have to push that weight in, and then it sort of reminds you that it's rear-wheel drive on the exit where it tries to over-rotate. And I think that's, again, similar to the Peugeot 205. It's on that limit and that little window where it's not going to kill you if you are overzealous with it. But at the same time, if you do want to take it easy, it's very easy to sort of just dial it back 5%. You know, it's not going to throw you into a barrier. My girlfriend's actually got a BMW Z3, the earlier generation of it. And I've had a quick go in that. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to kick it about, I'm going to see if it's any different. And I couldn't tell any difference or similarity in any way, obviously, in the game, because I've not booted it about as much as that. But you see the similarities in how it feels from a driver's perspective, just visually, just in the way that it behaves. It's interesting to make those little connections. And yeah, like Andrew said, it's the more dull version of the Z4 out of the two. The sort of pointier one they eventually made into the GT3 is definitely the more exciting version. But it's a great car to drive. It's a good laugh.
Yeah, a good addition for sure, I think. Now, on the flip side, moving beyond the cars, we did have a change to I think it's just to the force feedback settings, really. I know on the Fanatec GTDD Extreme, we've had now another change. During the last update, they introduced this.
Did you get full force? Is that what happened? Is that, yeah?
No. We're going the other direction. So
less force.
Yeah, less force. So the last update, we went from, which I thought before this, it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't full force, but it was pretty good. And then with the last update, there was this like sudden, really strong vibration when the tires would start to understeer, and you get this tire scrub from the front. And it was really very binary, either on or off.
Yeah.
And kind of disruptive and distracting. I know a lot of people in our forums, the wheel tuners, I guess, as you might put it, they were trying to figure out ways to mitigate that. And I think they did a pretty good job with some of their settings recommendations. But now it's almost like they've kind of gone the other way and trying to remove that, but it doesn't feel like it used to. So now it's kind of a bit numb, I think.
Yeah.
It's not as it's not good. I don't know. I need to put more time on it. I also need to drive faster cars because the BMW was the fastest car. Like I said, I only had a limited amount of time, so I was just driving these 3 new cars. So I need to drive something faster, but I'm not really happy with where the force feedback is right now in the game.
No, I took on one of the daily races a little bit later on in the afternoon in the GT3s at Dragon Trail. I did 3 run-throughs of that and tried mid-engine cars, front-engine cars, and mixed it up a little bit. And what I've found is that it's not so much the vibration anymore. You know, if you sit at 90 degrees of lock, it would randomly just start vibrating in your hands, and then as soon as you straighten up, it's gone again. But now I noticed more jolts in the feedback. I'm only on the belt-driven TGT2, so obviously not as strong as the wheel that Jordan's using. But even in that, I felt like the vibration was definitely dumbed down, but all of it was dumbed down as a result. It did feel numb is definitely the right word. But at the same time, if I had a front-wheel drive car, such as the Peugeot, it would suddenly jolt when the torque steer sort of finally, when it gripped up, when there was a bit more torque steer, it'd be a very sudden jolt, rather than a smooth one, which I'd noticed it was before. That was the only major difference that I picked up on. But it's definitely like they're picking good parts and bad parts, and they can't quite get all of them in a line at the same time. It's like as if they improve one thing, a few of the bits get left behind. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd like to know what's happening internally, because I mean, I thought that the vibration in the previous update was really jarring, and I was like, how?
Yeah,
like, why would they? How did this make it through QA testing?
Yeah,
and and so now we've kind of gone the other way, and I'm like, does nobody stop and say maybe we can find a happy medium here? I don't know. It's really it's a frustrating thing, and I said this last month. It's really hard to review things like wheels because you have this moving target. Every update, we have a different set of sensations and vibrations that are coming through the force feedback. So it makes it hard to give opinions on these types of things for those of us who have to do so.
Yeah.
It makes it hard to review.
Damn our jobs.
Yeah, makes our jobs pretty tough. But I mean, I'm sure let's just wait 30 days and it'll probably change again. And still no full force, of course.
Oh, well, you never know.
Well, speaking of things that we don't necessarily like in updates, there's something missing from this update, which has been missing from quite a lot of updates recently, and it's something that we talk about every time, and it's something that I think Jordan said last time out, we're starting to sound like a broken record.
Apricot Hill.
It's not only broken, it's been taped back together, broken the record player, and been sent to a landfill. No new tracks.
Nope.
Was the last one Eiger? I literally, it was so long ago, I can't even remember now.
Yeah.
And we say it every time, if you add a track, you get 530 new experiences. If you add a car, you get 39 new experiences.
Yeah.
You need tracks.
There was Fuji in 1.34 when I first joined GT Planet. That was the first video I did, was that update when Fuji arrived to the game with the Mercedes AMG GT3 2020.
That was just a skin change as well. Fuji was already in the game. That was just an update to the environment.
Oh God, it was.
Speaking of that, we're still waiting for the update to Suzuka with the updated signage, which I think they showed at the World Finals in 2022. Or was it 23? I forget. So long ago now. So we've been waiting for that for some time. GT7 does, to be fair, have more tracks than any other Gran Turismo game before it. More track variants, but there's still the same handful that are used in the daily race rotation, the same handful that's used in the weekly challenges, the same handful that's used in the World Series, which obviously is starting soon as well. And it's just one of those things that, and it's fully appreciated that tracks take so much longer than anything else.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things that I think everybody is just crying out for.
This is where you now get a ridiculous time trial that gets thrown at us next week. That's the Unimog at Special Stage Route X.
I'm hoping for Horse Thief Mile.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No. Just no.
Yeah. Eiger was the last track, and I think that was like July, wasn't it?
Yeah. I believe, it was around that time.
Mid-year last year,
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't even I was checking that, and I thought it was like in the fall, like late summer, but it wasn't. I mean, that's pretty much middle of summer, and it has been a very long time. So we're definitely overdue for a track. And then one of the tracks too, which we got before that, was Lake Louise, which is a snow track, and as cool, no pun intended, as that track is, it's very specialized. So it's something that you're only going to load up under specific conditions when you want to race in a rally car in the snow and that sort of thing. So that didn't really give us as many combinations of cars to drive on tracks as a regular track would, an actual circuit. Even Eiger, to an extent, it's fun. I think Eiger's great, but it's not a race track. It's kind of.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Eiger, it's obviously come back from GTXT and Prologue and 5, and it's a lovely place. It's nice to drive around in regular road cars. I was cracking around in the Unimog myself earlier on.
Can I get up the hill?
Mainly because that pit lane is just horrifying in the Unimog. But it's a fun track, but it's not exactly what you would call a classic racetrack. And it's been, I think, was Grand Valley the last racetrack? I mean, and even that's road-based, as you say, the Pacific Coast Highway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, we're looking at Watkins Glen? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's the last kind of racetrack, race-ready race.
Road Atlanta.
Yeah.
Ouch, is all that can be said for that, I think. It's and like Andrew's pointed out, we may be a broken record on this, but there's so many people that are in the same boat as us with the same ideas. We have people banging on the door in the comments section about it all the time, don't we? And I think at this point it's safe to say rightly so. It has been too long.
Well, it's getting to the point now where it's becoming pretty clear that they're definitely saving tracks for the next game
100%.
because And I mean, that's understandable because if GT8 was announced and it did not have a significantly larger amount of tracks, people would then complain and be like, why would I want this? That's kind of more cars and tracks. I mean, assuming it's going to be PS5 only, and they drop PS4 support, so we have maybe better graphics, but more cars and tracks is what people are going to be looking for. It's not going to be an amazing graphical leap or anything like that, like we had with GT7 and being the first game on the PS5 and that sort of thing. So it's going to be basically a giant content update. That's kind of how people sort of look at these second generation games. Second games that come out on a console generation, I think is how I should probably phrase that. But so yeah, it's getting to that point now where I think we may not really see that many more tracks. We'll just have to see. But
I mean, I think if they were to just drop one circuit that's a reasonable race. I mean, I know a lot of people call for real world ones. I can see the appeal of real world. I don't think we're going to get Silverstone anytime soon, bearing in mind the alleged cost of licensing that. But some kind of real-world, wider racing track that's purpose-built for racing. If they were to just drop one with a couple of variants, I think that'll probably keep people happy until GT8.
Yeah.
Whenever that is.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yep. Well, moving on, we have a price reduction on PSVR 2. Andrew, you just wrote that article today.
Yeah, so obviously it's been one of the kind of the more contentious things about the console. Well, it is a console really in and of itself, but it was the high launch price that it was more or less you were paying for another PS5 again to get this whole experience, and there was a big price cut. What was it? Christmas last. Which saw an awful lot of people jump onto the PSVR train. I've not yet done it myself, but I'm thinking about it now that we've had this price cut. So it's I think $399.99 US dollars, and also British pounds. So we get to pay a little bit more than than the Americans as usual. I can't remember what the euro price is, but 400 something. But it's a pretty big discount. It's about a third off, so it's one of those things that I think we're going to see a lot of people adopting it now that the price is now more, rather than just a special promotional thing like it was over Christmas. This is the RRP from this point on.
Yeah, I hope the PSVR 2 is sort of a slow burn. I hope that it made a splash and then it just sort of went away. And then I think a lot of it was due to price. When I posted my review of GT7 with PSVR 2, and I said it's great, but it's very expensive. And of course, the people in the comments are like, "What do you mean? It's not expensive, compared to a equivalent PC setup and all this stuff." And I'm like, yeah, but it's all relative, right? Because when an accessory is as much or more than the console that it's designed to work with, that's expensive.
Yeah.
And so people are always going to use the price of the PS5 as the anchor, I think, to judge the relative value of the accessories. I mean, that's how I look at things like that. And that's how I perceived it. But I think a lot of people have understandably held off on buying it because of the price. So now we are, I mean, it's still expensive. $400 is not, it's not cheap. I think that's not something people are just going to pick up like they might a new controller or something like that. It's an investment for sure. And I know that outside of Gran Turismo, I know there's not been a lot of reasons for people to run out and get one of these things. But if you are playing Gran Turismo, I mean, it's a really good experience, especially if you have the PS5 Pro.
Yeah,
it's at this lower price point. It's something I would definitely recommend. I mean, and just go get the Unimog and drive around with PSVR 2. I mean, that's worth $400 right there.
Well, the other thing is with VR as well is that, like you say, with people not just going out and picking it up, there's a lot more to think about with the compatibility of it as well, whether you have to remain sat down to play with it, or whether you do have a space large enough to be able to sort of walk around and play games where you do so. It's very compatibility based. Some people will have very big, amazing experiences with it, and others will have a very limited experience. But at the same time, they're going to be paying the same amount of money if they buy it in that window. So it's a case of every scenario being different and weighing up the benefit of having it over just playing flat screen for the price.
And we do have a lot of people on the forums who are saying, they can't go back to pancake mode, and it's how much of a transformative experience it is. Of course, it does still have a couple of flaws. I mean, since it was introduced, there's not been any updates in GT7 for the HUD, which could do with a few things, like having some timing data on screen would be lovely. But it's hopefully we're going to see some greater adoption and a few updates from the polyphony side of it.
We'll see, but good to see some price reductions. I think more people will be jumping onto that for sure. Moving on, the Gran Turismo World Series. We're about to come into March now, and we're starting to move forward with the 2025 season. So, Andrew, you want to tell us more about that?
I mean, there's only kind of like there's a limited bit of information at the moment. They've revealed the online qualifiers, which I think a lot of people last year were not huge fans of the format. It was 6 races long, 6 races for each of the Nations Cup and the Manufacturers Cup. And we did talk about this at the time, about how it seemed to be very brief. And it seems that the criticism has not quite been taken on board, because we've got another 6 race thing in Nations and Manufacturers this year round as well. We're looking at 5 of the 6 races count towards your score, so there's only 1 drop round. And then we've got issues with the timings as well. So if you're one of the top players who's looking to qualify for the live events, of which we don't know how many there are or where they're going to be yet, you need to be home before 6 p.m. UK time on a Wednesday if you want to get 3 of your rounds in. And I know other players in other regions have commented on this as well, that it's not really helpful to people who have a life where they go out to work, because you've got to get 5 of your 6 rounds in if you want to get the points to qualify. 3 of them are on Wednesdays, and 2 of them are during working hours. But yeah, I mean, there's been some comments on social media about that as well. I know that it was promised that it would be bigger than ever this year, so we still don't quite know where the live events are going to be this year, or how many of them there are, or where the final is going to be. I mean, we've heard a few bits and bobs here and there, but nothing concrete that I can share. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see that it's coming back. It's good to see that we're rolling into a new year with it. It does look like a couple of the sponsors have dropped out. So we don't have the FIA still. I think somebody was commenting that Michelin is no longer appearing on the screens either, and I think someone else pointed out that Genesis isn't, which is one of the 3 manufacturers. So there might be an extra spot for the manufacturers series for a qualifying brand this year as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I think that I think they need to decide what they want this competition to be, and I think they're sort of showing us that with this decision. But it's definitely going to be limited or accessible to a small group of highly competitive players and stuff. But they're sort of marketing it on two different ends here, because do they want it to be this esports series that anybody can take part in and have a shot at qualifying if you're fast enough and quick enough and it's accessible and that's all great? Or do you want to have this showcase of a series that features your best and most competitive drivers? I mean, these things are kind of at 2 different ends of the spectrum, and there's pros and cons to each one. Because one thing that I've said repeatedly about this GT World Series is that you do need to develop these drivers as characters, as people that you see again and again, and they get history, you get rivalries, you get this competitive nature, and you get really good standards of driving at the live events, which is of course, very important, or else people aren't going to tune in if it looks like a bunch of clowns out there, ramming each other off. Like, you want really fast drivers. You want people to say, wow, they're the best in the world. But you also want to give people this idea that maybe they can do it. And if you have these really, if you make it difficult to qualify for these things and you have a very limited player base that can actually play, then people are not going to perceive it as something that is this democratized form of racing.
Yeah.
So it's I guess they've kind of made a decision on which direction they want to go there on that.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be the same sort of thing as last year, where there's going to be X. I mean, last year it was 3 live events and then the final, and it was the same cohort of drivers in all 4 events. So yeah, you could get the whole developing the characters and playing up the. And to be honest, most of the drivers are too nice to be rivals with one another. It's kind of like more like friends and family than it is proper hardcore bad blood rivalry stuff. But yeah, it looks more like it's going to be the case again, where it's going to be whoever can qualify in that little short burst between March and May. They're going to be there for the however many live events there are this year, and the same bunch in the final. And that does have its benefits, but yeah, I mean, they're kind of making it harder to qualify for normal people. I mean, not normal people like me. I'm way too slow to qualify, but normal people who are quick and in their 20s, and as they what did they say in Paris, young heroes,
attractive young heroes. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out where the live events are going to be, because they did I think they had 2 entirely brand new venues, well, 2 entirely brand new locations. The Tokyo was a new venue as well. But obviously they've been to the city before, so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they're doing this year, whether they're going to try and expand, because I think 2019 had the most live events, so I don't know whether they're going to try and push that far. I know they were looking at maybe doing that in 2020, but obviously everything in the world conspired against that. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that we're going to see more this year.
Yeah. Well, last but not least, I do think it's worth mentioning that we have a release date for Forza Horizon on the PlayStation 5, which I still can't even believe that.
That's a crazy sentence to hear come out of your mouth.
I can't believe that I'm saying that, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like so long ago now that we wrote about the potential of it coming, and I had my wife standing over my shoulder with a camera while I was pretending to play Forza Horizon 5 on a DualSense for that featured image. It's amazing. So the important release date is April the 29th. That's going to be for the regular versions of the game. If you pick up the deluxe edition, you get 4 days early access. So it arrives on April the 25th. That actually coincides with the change to how the game is going to operate. The information on that's a little bit vague at the moment. I don't fully understand how it's going to change. But so what happens at the moment is every Thursday there's a kind of a refresh of what's called the playlist, and you have to work through and get as many points as you can to get the reward cards. And every 4 weeks there's a big change to the theme. And the next one actually expires, or not the next one, the one after the next one. The next one, because the one just started today. So the next one after that expires on April the 24th. So it looks to me like on April the 25th, they're going to do this big change to what they're going to call it Horizon Realms, where you can go back and you can revisit old playlists and all the changes to the world, and the ice rink and the stunt arena, and you can dip in and out of all the various themes that you like, and pick up new accolades and win new cars through that. So I don't fully understand how it's going to work, whether the playlist is going to continue in the background or what, but it does seem like an interesting root and branch change, and it coincides with this whole that all of the PlayStation gamers are going to come in and join at the same time. So it's fun times.
It absolutely is, and I think that one of the key things, I was going to mention it as a point about the GT World Series as well, sim racing and racing games and the whole community, it's about inclusion. And making sure that everybody can do it in some form or another, whether that be using a controller wherever you may be in the world, or whether you've got a full dedicated sim rig to it, you can still compete on the same circuit together. And I think that Forza Horizon 5 coming to PS5 is going to be so important for that, because it's just another huge platform of people. And I think, to be honest, a lot of people will always say, oh, we don't need it, we've got Gran Turismo. And then there's, on the other side of the fence, people on Xbox are saying, you need Forza Horizon, it's better than Gran Turismo, and so on. We're only going in one direction with that. Gran Turismo isn't going to Xbox or anything yet. But it's more of a case of there's a huge door opened now to a new platform. And I think it's going to be great to see that inclusion. And I hope that it's going to be welcomed with open arms, as it should be.
Yeah. I mean, Horizon is a lot of fun. I mean, I think I said last time out that, sometimes it's a little bit, you will have fun. I specifically commanded it.
Yeah.
But it is, it doesn't take itself particularly seriously. I mean, the cars drive like cars. It's not like a fully faithful Assetto Corsa Evoluzione type, faithful simulation underneath it. But, it's good enough. The cars are relatively different enough. There's, off-road and on-road driving. There's a little bit of a difference between the two, and dirt tires do help you out if you're off-roading. Jumps and speed traps and trains running through the middle of the world, and big floating island in the sky made of Hot Wheels and all sorts of weird, crazy stuff like that. But I mean, we were talking about how GT8 is going to have more cars and more tracks. The base version of Forza Horizon 5, if you just buy the basic game, has got something like 830 cars.
Yeah.
Now, there's a few duplicates in there, obviously, but, bearing in mind we've been Gran Turismo fans for the past 25 years, we can't exactly complain about duplicated cars.
Nope.
But, there's nearly, 899, I think, in total, if you have all of the various add-on packs as well. And we also don't yet know about what the pricing of the add-on packs is going to be. But, yeah, it's, there's a lot of cars from a lot of history. I mean, there's a Unimog in it as well. So,
sold.
It stands to be a lot of fun, and it seems to be priced relatively keenly. It's not quite as expensive as a brand new PlayStation 5 game. So, yeah, it's one of those that I think I'm going to look forward to play, even though your save game won't transfer. So, I'm going to have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I'm getting it for the Unimog alone.
Yeah, me too.
Easy.
Is there a Peugeot 205 GTI?
There's a 205. I think there's a rally.
Oh, yes.
1.3 rally.
Oh, get in. That'll do. Sold. But no, it's even the fact that your save doesn't transfer. I know a couple of people that have got both an Xbox and a PS5 as well. I know people that would like the idea of starting again without having to get rid of all that other progress. So there'll be a lot of people that do get it on both, just to go through that journey of, rediscovering how it felt at the very start of the game, before you had all the money, before you had everything unlocked. The journey and the progression of something like Forza is what makes it such a good game sometimes. So yeah, I think regardless of whether it's just people that haven't played it on a PS5 before, obviously, or whether they haven't even played it on an Xbox, there will be a lot of people that do a bit of both.
What a time to be alive, huh?
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I think we will call it a show, call it a wrap. Thanks, guys, for staying up. It's very late in the UK right now.
It is nearly 3 in the morning right now.
Yes, but the things we do.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
For content, right?
For clickbait. What?
Yeah, all of clickbait, yeah.
Hopefully
we'll be coming back next month with a track in Gran Turismo 7.
Oh, we won't. Stop it. We won't.
Now you're just causing.
I have a cardboard cutout of Sabrina Carpenter that appeared in a video recently. If we get something like Apricot Hill or Midfield Raceway, I will eat it on camera. In the next one, I will eat it on camera. Eat her. Sorry, love. No. I've realised what I've done.
Oh, man.
Wrap up, Jordan, quick.
Okay, all right. See you guys later. That's a wrap.